Yes, guys, what is going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Adapt Performance Podcast. In this podcast, you are going to learn how to punch harder, how to punch with more power. Okay, we're going to go through this fairly in depth. Okay, and it's that question that every striking sports athlete asks. And you know, when people inquire for coaching through Adapt and they are a striking sports athlete, that's usually what they say is, "I want more power." Okay, and I can emphasize with that. So my first ever sport, you know, my intro into the world of sport actually outside of kind of PE was MMA. It was MMA and kickboxing. Did that for a good 4 or 5 years. So I 100% get it. And this was actually my intro into strength and conditioning as well. You know, as being an athlete that really wanted to maximize my physical preparation and make sure that I was strong enough, powerful enough, fit enough, fast enough, all that good stuff. You know, I looked at strength and conditioning, and actually I first looked at CrossFit. That was my first step into the world of physical prep. And there's some really good lessons that I got from that, but ultimately kind of progressed in a slightly different direction of going a little bit more sports science based, and kind of unpicking the sport from a needs analysis standpoint. And when I say needs analysis, what I mean is trying to break down the sport into its different components to understand what are the different things which add to you being able to perform maximally, essentially. So I 100% get it. I get that is something that people would want to improve. So I've put this together as a way of just answering some of the questions for people and just giving them, just giving you, you know, a little bit of my take on it. And there may be some things in here which are, you know, you don't necessarily agree with, and that's fine. We can have these discussions. But if you do have any specific questions off the back of it, give us a shout. Okay, I'm open ears. Okay, I'm here for hearing your feedback as well. So what I want to do then is kickstart this. I'm going to go through a few different parts of punching power. Okay, I'm not going to touch on everything, but I'm going to cover some of the more important bits, at least from a physical preparation standpoint. So the first one, okay, the first thing that I want you to do to improve your punching power and to punch harder is I want you to get better technique. Okay. It does not matter if you are the most physically gifted athlete in the world. If you've got strong legs, powerful legs, strong upper body, if you can't throw a technically sound punch that is executed in the correct way, it doesn't matter the engine you've got, okay? It doesn't matter the engine you've got if you can't drive it very well, okay? And you will hear this quite a lot in some of the podcasts. If this is the first one that you've listened to, you'll hear that quite a lot. You need to become a master at your sport, okay? You need to put a lot of your eggs in the basket of becoming an absolute, you know, unit, a PhD, a pure master at what you do. That's including the technical stuff, the tactical stuff. It's being around the culture. It's understanding what makes a really strong performer. Okay, so that is the first thing. Okay, and you know, not to be Captain Obvious when I say that, but when people usually ask the question of how can I improve punch power, they don't usually expect that as the first thing, but it is. Like, make sure you've ticked that box, and you could probably never be too good at throwing a punch. So yeah, make sure you're ticking that box. Okay. Do not undersell the importance of really purposeful practice in your sport to improve it. Okay. So if we unpick that a little bit then. So let's think about playing your sport or throwing punches and all that type of thing. I want you to get a good amount of volume in. Okay. I want you to spend a lot of time doing that. How much time totally depends on where you're at in your journey, how robust you are to tolerate volume, and ultimately how much kind of damage you're taking along the way. But get really good at the technique side of things by doing more of it. And this can definitely be pad work. It could be bag work. It could be shadow boxing. Okay. I've spent like quite a bit of time around GB boxing in the past, doing some work placements. I have some friends that work there. They shadow box a lot. Okay. They shadow box a lot. It's low impact. It allows you to practice that skill more and more. So I encourage you to just think about that. How can you find opportunities to get a little bit more technical work in? Let's follow on from a technique piece under the same umbrella of technique. Get good coaching. Okay. This is a really difficult one because You may be associated to a certain coach, a certain club. They may be amazing, they may not be amazing, but ultimately you need good coaches and you need good people around you that are going to pick up on those things and really help you to upskill and just make sure that you're ticking all of the small boxes along the way in terms of how you're throwing your punches. Okay. And then the next one is probably actually the little bit not out there from an S&C standpoint, but maybe something that people don't do. And I almost guarantee a lot of people don't do it. If we think about the adaptation, okay, of improving power, okay, so if we look at athletes that do this day in, day out, they are a powerful athlete. We look at shot putters, sprinters, all that type of thing. What we need to do is we need to think about how they approach their training. Okay. They will rest for long periods of time between reps. Their reps will be super, super short, and they will generally try and keep the quality as high as physically possible. So if I say to you, right, okay, we're going to hit a 3-punch combo, a 2-punch combo, something that's really short in duration. Let's say don't go above 6 seconds. Okay. I want you to hit these as hard as physically possible, okay? Give it 100%. It is life or death. If you beat your PB in terms of the amount of force that you are registering, I will give you £10 million. Approach your power training with that mentality. And I guarantee you'd make sure you're fully rested. You wouldn't be out of breath. You would be mentally locked in. You'd be focused, and you would execute like a savage. You would go at it, okay? So I saw a post quite a while ago from James Langford, who used to work with British, it might be English, no, GB Taekwondo, okay? And he did a post around this, essentially saying, train like a sprinter when it comes to it. So do an 8-second combo, whatever it is, attack the bag, attack the pads, whatever it is, rest for 3 to 5 minutes. Give your body, your cardiovascular system, and your central nervous system adequate time to recover. And I do not doubt, you're hearing that and probably thinking 3 minutes, mate. Come on, 5 minutes, mate. I'm good to go in 2. Yeah, you cardiovascularly, you probably are good to go. I don't think you'd be out of breath for too long after 5 seconds of hitting something, particularly if you're super fit. But that's not what it's always about. It's not always cardiovascular fitness that is the main, weak link. The central nervous system takes time, okay, to make sure that you are fully replenished and ready to attack it. So a good example of this is go in with the intent, potentially even your S&C work, okay? If you've got a bag in the corner, attack it. That could be your power work for the day. You might do a 5-second burst, rest for 3 to 5 minutes, repeat that for six times, 10 times, okay? Something that's super high quality, okay? So first box, master your technique, okay? Make sure you're throwing the punch correctly, whatever kind of style that you have. So we're thinking about using the lower body. We're thinking about that integration of the core. We're using, the limbs well. We're using your arms well. You're getting good reach. You're not overreaching, all that good stuff. Okay. So I'm not going to touch any more on that because I am not a boxing coach. I'm not a striking coach. I know enough, but I don't know enough to kind of go into the nitty gritty of it. So technique, hammer that. Okay. We're then going to start to think about the contribution of the lower body. Okay. We know you need to have a lower body. We need to have lower body strength and power because essentially the force comes from the lower body and it travels all the way up through the chain into the fist. Okay. It transfers through. And there's a little bit of research around that. It's not the best research in the world by any means, but I think if you speak to boxers, you speak to athletes and coaches and Muay Thai and all those people, they'll all say, yeah, you need a decent amount of lower body strength and power in order to initiate that punch and have really sturdy foundations to anchor that punch against. So let's break that down then. How do we do this? Well, strength, we're looking at getting really, really strong. We're talking 80% of 1 rep max, 85% of 1 rep max, between 1 and 6 reps. We're talking between 3 and 6 sets. We're getting 3 minutes rest and above. Okay, same thing. We're after output. We're after being really, really detail orientated with this to get super strong. So think about your squats, your deadlifts, your split squats, your Romanian deadlifts, your hip thrusts. You can even use machines, okay? They might have a bad rap in some regards, but machines are not the enemy. Machines can be, one of your biggest fans for for an athlete that's taken a few knocks and potentially, doesn't always have the mobility requirements for a really deep, pretty looking back squat. Yeah, I'm not against using a leg press. I'm not against using some leg machines. Okay, so there's the strength piece. Maximize those. Okay, get strong. To follow on, we're thinking power. Okay, the way we improve lower body power, jumping based exercises. Okay, so we're talking ballistic stuff. So can you throw something, a medicine ball, a kettlebell swing, Olympic weightlifting? Okay, can you look at those? Plyometrics, can you jump? Can you do pogos? Can you do drop jumps? Can you, it's not technically a plyometric, but box jumps and broad jumps. Get the lower body used to firing, essentially, producing maximal amounts of force in a really short period of time. That is how we improve power. Again, going back to the initial piece around punching, do it with extreme intent, life or death. Yeah. Get the rest in, attack it. So that's what we're looking at there. Strength and power. That's going to be our thing, initiating from the floor all the way through the body. The next thing up the chain, once we've started thinking about that, is the rotational power. We're thinking about the core. Okay. Have we got stability around everything there? Okay. Have we got the ability to transfer force from the legs through the torso, through the core, into the arm and the fist? Okay. We need to train it. We need to train it, and we need to train it in a variety of ways. We need to think about our core training or our ab training, our rotation training being pretty varied, in my opinion, in order to make it really well-rounded. Absolutely do all your sit-ups and your Russian twists and everything that you do in your skills training, all the muscular endurance style, 100 sit-ups, whatever that is. Great. I think that ticks a lot of boxes for us, for sure. And let's think about what boxes you've already ticked. If you have done a lot of muscular endurance style training in your skills, well, maybe actually we can look at our core training in the gym being slightly different. Can we do maximal intent stuff again? Can we look at heavy medicine ball throws, rotation, side tosses, scoop tosses, all the medicine ball variations we can think of that are rotational based? Just get the spring, the coiling up action. Okay. And you can also get strength training for that as well. It doesn't just need to be muscular endurance or power. You can get strong through the core. I personally love, you take the same approach actually as your lower body training in a sense. We need high loads. We need it to be lowish rep ranges, So I love ab rollouts for one of those. And that's an anti-extension core exercise. And it'll make you sore as shit. Not that being sore is necessarily the sign of a good exercise, but it will do that, at least when you're not used to it. So we're thinking about that, okay? Can we train the core to be super elastic and able to transfer force super, super quick? And there's a lot of things that go into this. It's not necessarily just about the muscular action. There is fascia that's in there as well. We're thinking about tendons that all make up a part of the core and the glutes and the lower back and everything. It's not always just going to be muscular based. There are other things going on behind the scenes as well. Another benefit of this is this can also feed into your skills training and your technique training. The stronger, the more elastic, and the more robust your core and midsection is, I would like to say that we're going to be able to enhance the quality of your actual skills training. So it's not just this and this. They're not two separate things. One can improve the other and the other can improve the one. It goes both ways, okay? So you can get higher quality training in your skills training by doing all this stuff, okay? It's not necessarily that just doing your S&C bits is going to lead to a harder punch on fight night, okay? Doing your S&C bits is going to allow you to train harder and do that thing a little bit better to now execute on fight night. So yeah, going off on one a little bit there and feeding through the core training and everything just around that. I'm going to open this up a little bit more to be more of a robustness angle, but think about, okay, well, what are my limiters? What are my weak links that I feel consistently? Do I get ankle pain? Do I get lower back pain? Do I have a weak glute? Some of the things that you've probably heard in the past, there'll be an element of truth to them, but it's worth getting assessed. So think about kind of robusting yourself a little bit, okay? Moving through then. So we've looked at lower body, comes from the lower body, travels through the core, boom. We need to look at the arm, okay? Going all the way through to fist. There is a little bit of research around bench press and punch performance. There's a little bit of research around explosive press ups and punch performance. Ultimately, we're trying to create a really fast, explosive arm, okay, so that we can land that thing. And again, we're thinking strength is going to be a big thing. Have we got the maximal strength there and the absolute strength so that we can fire that arm out explosively? And that doesn't tick all the boxes. Just being strong alone is not enough. Look at Eddie Hall. He does not punch quick. But you know what? I bet it would still hurt being punched by him because of the pure strength that is there as well. Obviously, he's got mass on his side, and that adds to it. But we want strong, but we also want powerful. Some of the things that we might use in our training, and the exercise itself isn't necessarily the thing that I want you to anchor this podcast on by any means. It's more around the principles and the adaptation. So just make sure you're doing some form of strength and power for the arms and the upper body. So your bench presses, your dumbbell chest presses, your overhead presses, landmine presses, press ups, chest press machine, weighted press ups, decline press ups, all those things are going to get you strong if the adaptation prescription is right. So if you're lifting heavy, you're doing lowish rep ranges, you're getting multiple sets of that with a decent amount of recovery to make sure that the quality is high, you're going to achieve that strength. When we look at power, okay, well, we chatted a little bit about this in with a technique piece where you can use bag work and pad work, and you can use that as a way of training arm power. Okay, just make sure that everything matches up with what you just said around the loading parameters. Okay, making sure quality is high. Medicine ball stuff, again, really, really good. The beauty of medicine ball stuff is you can really lob it. You can absolutely send it because you're not having to. There's a little bit of research around this as well. So when we do an exercise, so a bench press, a squat, whatever it is, our body will naturally slow down that limb towards extension. So before it fully extends, your body will want to slow it down so that it doesn't injure itself, so it breaks, okay? And one of the things that ballistic training, sprinting and jumping and all those things, one of the big benefits is because it allows your brain to override that, okay? And bench presses, you may naturally slow down, or you may actually have to force yourself to accelerate all the way through to the end of that range of motion. And that's why a lot of people use bands, actually, because the bands at the bottom of the range of motion have decreased, and then you have to accelerate all the way through to lock out your arms quickly. So it actually, using bands is a really good way of almost bridging the gap a little bit between pure strength training and power training, okay? Just take that with a little bit of pinch of salt, but that is essentially how it works. Okay, and then we're going to think about, well, once we've ticked those boxes, we need to be able to stiffen up, okay? We need to be able to land that punch with a certain, like a champion. We need to land it like a champion. We're thinking about, okay, we don't want to throw a punch and just, it's like throwing a rope at somebody, okay, when there's no intent behind it. That's actually probably an okay analogy. If you throw a rope, yeah, it might tap them on the head, but there's not much behind it. Well, actually, I want you to think about a whip, okay? There's going to be a big initial wind up. You're then going to throw it through the air, okay, where it's relaxed a little bit. And then just before you attack the target, you're going to pull back on it, and it creates that cracking motion of the whip, okay? And that there's actually research around that as well. You know, the double pulsing action, or the double peak, they call it, of there's a lot of force in the initial part of the movement. It then goes through a relaxation phase because we want muscle relaxation. Go back to one of the earlier podcasts, I think it was 2 podcasts ago, where I speak through muscle relaxation and some of the ways we can train it. But you don't want to throw a punch stiff. You don't want to just hold on to it for dear life. There needs to be an element of, you know what, I've thrown it, it's moving, and then boom, you stiffen up just before the end of it. Okay. And again, that feeds into the technique stuff, definitely, 100%. And it's not always just about having amazing technique when you're fresh, because you could definitely be an amazing technical fighter when you're fresh. But if you can't handle the composure when you're tired, or you're in the corner, or whatever that is. So there's more things that go into this. Hopefully you kind of got the gist here. It's not as simple as do this one exercise. What is the best exercise for punch power? It's not that, okay? There is a lot that goes into it. So there's a few things for you to think about. And just going back to the double peak, actually, some of the ways you could train that, I would recommend going back to the previous podcast episode just to get a little bit more in depth on this. But oscillatory training, okay, which is essentially doing exactly that. You're going to contract, relax as quick as possible. Get the brain working in that way where it can flip a switch really, really quickly instead of it being delayed. Okay, that will add to it. And you can also do that, contract, relax for everything that we've just spoke about. So that could be lower body, that can be rotational power, that can be upper body power, all of it. Okay, it all comes together. So just think about those things. Are you ticking these boxes at the moment? Okay, and all these things do not necessarily need to be in your program every day or even every week or even every phase, to be honest with you, because we do have a limited amount of training time, and you will have to, look at what is the specific thing that we are trying to improve in this phase, and as a way of really dialing in and making sure that we are attacking that limiting factor. Okay. So I covered a lot in quite a short period of time there. And I wanted it to be pretty precise. And there may be some things there that you don't agree with. There may be some things there where actually there's nothing new. But hopefully this gives you a little bit of a blueprint for that stuff. Okay. And like I said, I've experimented a lot in the past with punching power exercises, and I'm going to share some resources with you now. So different pages to follow on social media that preach these same things. So from Sheffield, look at some of the work from Boxing Science. Okay, look at what they do. They've got a lot of info out there. Look at some of the work that they do out of GB Boxing. So follow the social media accounts of Gary Hutt and Sammy Grady Graham. So look at some of the stuff, they'll be sharing more and more as the years go on, I imagine. Look at Jeffrey Shue. Okay, look at some of the stuff he's putting out about combat sports. Absolutely amazing. Look at Graham Morris again, going more in the Muay Thai space. But what you'll see is a lot of these principles that people speak about are very, very similar. And they may just be structured in a slightly different way, use a little bit different terminology and that type of thing. But ultimately, we're all kind of aiming towards the same thing. We just might do it in a slightly different way based on the athletes that we've got around us. So, right then, I'm going to leave that there. If anybody has any questions, okay, on how they can apply this to their own S&C training, give me a shout. Okay, I'm more than happy to talk you through how we can set this up. And as always, we offer an online strength and conditioning service where we literally take away all the guesswork for you and actually just give you evidence-based solutions to where you're currently at. And we do it in a really appropriate way to maximize, what you're actually doing, whether you're trying to compete a couple of times a month or whether you're actually just spacing it out a little bit longer, or whether you're actually you just love training. All right. So without further ado, then I'm going to wrap up this podcast. Thank you very much. I'm Jordan Webster, and this was the Adapt Performance Podcast.